Thank you.
So I'll let you guys do that. Let me get the share screen here. Okay, I think you should be good.
Okay. What box do I have to hit if I'm to get the screen, or because Jelani did some sound over, so what's the box I have to click again?
So when you go to share screen, I think at the bottom left corner, there's a spot where you can click share computer audio or something.
Let's see, let me try it again. Oh, okay. Okay, can you guys see it okay? Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's gonna do that again.
Oh my God. When do you guys want to text Jelani?
I can text her.
Okay. At least it's later on, and worst case we can wing it. But should I just start and then, or what do you think?
Did it do that on anybody? I feel like other people have presented with the audio and it's been fine.
I don't know. Alyssa has her part of my presentation on audio, and it worked when I tried to play it. But I don't know if it's different for like when we try to present it like now. Like I don't know if that'll make it.
Yeah, because I think I've played an audio
Different.
presentation before. I don't know. Does somebody else want to pull it up, like Sia or Val, and see if that? I don't know if it's like a setting that you have, Taylor, or I don't. I have no idea. I
Yeah,
know nothing.
I don't know either.
My level of tech savviness has improved like 400% since March, but still, like the bar was really low to start, so that doesn't do a whole lot.
It just asked me to request access as well.
Okay. Okay, so maybe that's not something.
I texted her, so we'll see if she gets back to me.
Okay. Should we just start and then? Okay. I'll share my screen again. All right. Well, we did for exercise physiology or this exercise physiology presentation, and me, Val, Jelani, and Thea were the ones that were doing it. Okay, so just to like take a step back of like what is exercise physiology. So like we learned that there's just like so much to do with it, and it just seems like it's like an endless subject, right? So like just taking a step back, like what is it? So it's just basically like how your body is working in response to exercise, and generally like we're looking at like the benefits overall. There's more benefits than bad things that are happening, as we'll talk about, but yeah, it's just like the physiological changes. So we talked about there's acute and there's chronic. So acute is just the physiological changes after just one bout of exercise. And then there's chronic, which is the physiological changes that occur in response to long-term exercise. So not like, you're working out for 1 week just to, lose 5 pounds or something. It's like over a long period of time of whatever you're kind of doing and taking a look of those physiological changes in response to that. So obviously it's a huge subject, right? So kind of these little umbrella terms that we can kind of break it down as we talked about in lecture is the aerobic, resistance, and an intermittent kind of exercise. So aerobic is just something that can be sustained for a long period of time, and your heart rate and your breathing rate is changed in response to that to kind of keep that going. And then your resistance training is kind of like your anaerobic exercise. So those are things that are going to be like fast, hard, just low rep things like push-ups, etc. Those more strength things. And then intermittent is like we talked about in lecture, is the like sports, like something that's kind of in between, you know, like, so it might be soccer or basketball or a combination of the two of those things. So, so primarily we looked between the relationship of the mile time and the maximal number of push-ups. So what we were trying to see if we could assess a subject's level of fitness based on the amount of maximal push-ups that could be done in a level of time, and then compare that to their mile time to see if there's any kind of relationship in respect to that. Sorry, that was up there. So our hypothesis was that if we had a lower mile time, that would result in an increased number of maximal push-ups done in the time interval of 90 seconds. So just based on this premonition, so we were kind of basing this off of, you know, assessing somebody's fitness level could be done with a long endurance exercise, like running a mile. It's a good length that, you know, people can do. It's challenging for some people, it's easier for some people, but the time that is completed is a good kind of indication of where your fitness level kind of is. So we chose that, and we were kind of thinking that this endurance training would then have an effect on the shorter bouts of exercise, because, you know, running a mile and doing good in it is something that takes a lot of time. You can't just do that in one day generally. So from a physiological standpoint, like just examining some of these differences, we have first off, resistance training, or our aerobic exercise. So remember, this is just kind of a review from class, but we see an increase in both systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure, which is very important because the diastolic blood pressure is the muscles are helping contract our blood back through our body and helping us to get better oxygenation in those points, which then helps to the fast twitch fibers or the type 2 fibers to be stimulated. And remember, these are the type of fibers that are going to create more force per cell. So that's going to give us more of the grunt work to get, you know, a heavier load or whatever the activity might be. Also, we have the selective hypertrophy of these type 2 muscles, or these fibers, excuse me. So this just means that we are selectively activating those muscles that we're using. So for example, if we're doing an upper body exercise, we're not going to be sending as much stimulation to our legs and stuff like that, just to be more efficient. Also, we'll have an increase of actin and myosin in each cell. So this is for the, back to the sliding theory, we have more actin and myosin overlap, so giving us that more force. And generally, with these type 2 fibers, these are going to be a shorter duration, so they're early fatigued. So from a metabolic standpoint, generally we're going to be using the anaerobic glycolysis and the creatine phosphate systems. Also, we're going to be using our fuel source is going to be carbs. So those are some just basic kind of looking over, and I'll dive into like what the important parts are in a second. It's a lot, I know, but now we're looking at the aerobic exercise. These are going to be the changes that occur over a long period of time as well, and with those endurance kind of more exercises. So this is actually going to change our heart mass and volume, like we talked about in class. So that's going to allow us to have more blood, allow us to hold more blood, and that's just, it happens in response to the plasma volume increase that occurs within our bodies over a long period of time, which is pretty interesting. And again, these focus more on the slow twitch fibers. So we're going to have increased myoglobin. So we're going to have higher oxygenation throughout the blood. And then the selective hypertrophy of the type 1 fibers. So we're going to be, again, just selecting these slow twitch fibers. And generally speaking, these are going to be fibers that are going to be more resistant to fatigue. They're going to have a longer duration for the activity. And generally our fuel is going to be triglycerides. So basically an unlimited supply, right? Like we have an ungodly amount of fat in a given time we can use, you know, if that were our only fuel we could use at one point. And then remember, like oxidative phosphorylation, this is like the huge part of this is like the gold standard, as we talked about like weeks ago. But we get the most ATP out of here, it's going to be the most efficient metabolic pathway. And so that's kind of where we were kind of thinking, like, if somebody is good endurance wise, they can use this faster, it can be great. And then that would be kind of affect the resistance training as far as number of push-ups. So of course, like, aerobic is better. Like, we want the oxidative phosphorylation. We have the triglyceride storage that's, you know, unlimited per se. And it's fatigue resistant. So why wouldn't we want to use it, right? So as I said, like, if someone is well trained for these endurance exercises, then anaerobic exercise should be a piece of cake. So anaerobic exercise, remember though, does have a rate limiting step, which is the PFK enzyme in the anaerobic glycolysis. And down at the bottom, like, that's just a little schematic of the oxidative phosphorylation. Just, that's our gold standard, right? I don't know, I thought it was kind of cool, but whatever. We know that with training, like, we can increase the efficiency of this rate limiting step. So that means that we can get through this anaerobic exercise more, and then it will have less inhibition for that. So that's kind of where our premonition was also with kind of the design of the study. So, but the point is that is this rate limiting step going to be make a big enough difference where we aren't going to see as much effect in our aerobic exercise, or is that going to lead to fatigue that kind of outweighs, like, the benefits of the aerobic exercise? Maybe, possibly. That's what we're kind of going to explore too.
Okay, so now since Taylor kind of gave you guys an introduction to what we were looking into, next is the methods and how we were able to conduct this study. So first off, for the equipment needed, only a timer was needed for these bouts of testing. So pretty simple when it came to equipment. And then the first step for the study was to find 10 different subjects to complete both a running test as well as a push-up test. And so for our particular 10 subjects, 6 were males and then 4 were females. And all of these were of varying ages, fitness levels, and then, like I stated earlier, of both genders as well. So a lot of variety in the subjects. And then next, each subject, who I would like to just say that they were all in different environments, so that could play a factor in an error, which I'll talk about later. But they were all asked to run a 1 mile timed run. And these runs were supposed to be at about sub-maximal pace, so essentially not all out, but also not easy. So in regards to, like, the RPE scale that we talked about, or the rate of perceived exertion, we are hoping for the subjects to rate this particular activity of running 1 mile between, like, a 4 and a 6, hopefully, which on the scale equates to moderate to vigorous activity. So the subjects can still speak a sentence, but they can't do that for sustained periods of time. And so then the researchers started the timer when the subject took off for their 1 mile running time trial. And then as soon as the subject had completed that trial, the researcher then, of course, stopped the watch and recorded that time on a Google Doc and then also an Excel spreadsheet for later analysis. And then the subject was then given limited to no rest time between bouts of the 1 mile time run and the push-up test. And then they were asked to complete the maximum amount of push-ups they could do within a 90-second time interval. And so as soon as the subject started their first push-up, the time for 90 seconds, and then after that 90 seconds was up, the total number of push-ups that subject completed was then recorded as well on the Google Doc and Excel spreadsheet for data analysis to be done to determine, like, the results of our study. And so as we had discussed earlier, our research question was to determine if there was indeed a relationship between the mile time and the push-up, maximum push-ups, to better understand if there is a correlation, if any, between aerobic fitness and muscular endurance. So with that question in mind, we determined that a correlation test would be the best possible way to understand the particular study, because a correlation test, like it states in the name, tries to see if there is a connection, if any, between the two variables. And our variables were muscular endurance, and we were trying to see between the two variables there. So You can go. Okay.
Right, so this is just the Google Doc where we recorded our subject's mile time and number of push-ups and whether or not they're male or female. And so that's just kind of visual right there. And so from the results, from a correlation test, we see that we have a negative correlation coefficient of negative 2.35, and that looking at it, it's just a negative slope. So therefore, these findings like do not support our hypothesis of that faster mile time will lead to an increase in maximum number of push-ups. So maybe you can go back. So maybe some reasons for this is just like why we found what we found is that like a lot of the subjects were experienced like endurance fatigue, so the subjects who ran like a faster mile used a lot of their energy to run a really good mile, yet did not have a lot of energy left to really do as many push-ups as they can. And like Taylor was talking about in the introduction, is that we're all born with different fiber types, type 1 and type 2. So people with more type 1 fibers, they'll probably maybe have performed better and aerobically, and people born with more type 2 fibers might have performed better during the push-up test. And we did use both males and females. So this can contribute to some of our outliers as far as just being one specific study on males and females. Just looking at the graph, there are a few outliers there. So just kind of like the difference between males and females can contribute to that, because males do have a larger muscle mass than females. And females, like we did learn, they can perform better in heat. And this is summer, so we did test a majority of the subjects when it was like 85 to 90 degrees out as well. So therefore, we can say that like aerobic fitness does not have a direct correlation with anaerobic performance. And we want to just like, if we want to study this further, we would like to explore the role of anaerobic conditioning and strength training on the mile time. And then maybe explore if rate limiting and like the rate limiting enzyme PFK has any influence on this. So some errors and discrepancies that we saw within the study is that maybe we had needed like a larger sample size and maybe more of a specific age range, because like Sia said, that like we did have subjects in various ages. So maybe just keeping it to like one age limit, like maybe like 15 to 20 year olds are just college students. And then the role of gender did play on the experiment. Maybe just testing males or maybe just testing females would make it more of a cohesive study. And then future experiment design could be more specific as well. And like the research topic was quite a big, so maybe going into more specifics, like maybe like heart rate, NRP, and other variables like that would help it like be more specific like that as well. All right, so a lot can be said about fitness and like just viewing the literature. There's many research done about aerobic and anaerobic fitness. So these two researchers, Duzin and Achidis, they wanted to investigate further into the impacts of aerobic and anaerobic exercise on both the exercise energy systems. So they had 16 total participants. They had 8 female subjects, 8 male subjects, and all were athletes, and they split them into 2 groups. One group did an aerobic training and another group did an aerobic training. So that means like 4 males and 4 males were in the anaerobic training, and then 4 males and 4 females were in the aerobic training. And this was a study done in 3 days, and they did the training every 3 days for 8 weeks. And what the aerobic training consisted of, the subjects would run for an hour on the treadmill from 60 to 70% maximal heart rate for 1 hour. And then the anaerobic training plan consisted of them running at like maximum heart rate from 80 to 90%, and they completed like a workout. So they did like 2 by 100 meters, 2 by 200 meters, 2 by 300 meters, 1 by 400 meters, 2 by 300 meters, 2 by 200 meters, and 2 by 100 meters, and like it's all like sprints. So they analyzed how hard they were working aerobically with a bicycle ergometer and gas analyzer, and they analyzed the subject's anaerobic training through a bicycle ergometer. The subjects analyzed the researchers analyzed the subject's data using a paired t-test, comparing the pre and post data, and they used the 95% confidence interval. And then they did use an independent t-test to see the variances between both males and females using a 95% confidence interval. And some significant things they found within their study is that anaerobic training caused a high level difference in terms of aerobic capacity. And thus, like, it helped increase their aerobic ability. So basically the subject's aerobic fitness was determined by their anaerobic training. And what the researchers also found is that the subject's aerobic training results in an increase in aerobic capacity of only 4%, and like this was not significant. And I found this really interesting because you would think that like after 8 weeks of training, like aerobically, it would probably increase significantly. And so this is just something maybe to research into further. And I noticed that like they used both males and females, and something like that we could have used for our study as well.
Right. So another one we kind of looked at was this article, which explained or was kind of exploring the relationship between functional movement and the relationship it had on performance or on athletic performance. So what this study did is that it took 25 NCAA Division I golfers, and it assess them based on their functional movement. So what that basically means is that it's a series of self-described movements that are repeated until failure. So for example, deep squats, inline lunges, trunk stability push-ups were just some examples that were mentioned within the article, the scholarly article. And so these golfers were put through a series of just different tests, and then they were kind of used a correlation stat to kind of explore if there was any kind of relationships. So first off, they were put through strength training, which was done through these functional movements, just to kind of explore the anaerobic kind of side of their just fitness in general. So this was done on one day, and then after a 24-hour period, they explored their club head swing velocity. So that's just specific to these athletic athletes with their golf swing. So that would be something that each one of these are very well trained in. And then they were asked to sprint for about 20 meters for time. So like I said, they used a correlation statistics to validate the study, and then they used a Pearson correlation coefficient with a p-value of less than 0.05 at a 95% confidence interval to find significance. It was interesting though, because they kind of had the same idea between like that we kind of did initially, thinking that kind of more endurance training is important for these more specific the aerobic training would be effect on the anaerobic kind of more side of things, but they found actually there was no correlation between the functional movement test and the club head swing velocity, which I thought was pretty interesting. So they also did expect the aerobic to have more significance here and to find a correlation, but it seems as though anaerobic is more important than they expected. So maybe they kind of alluded at the idea of that conditioning is going to be more important for these sports, and kind of the strength training and everything like that. So they, at the end of the article, were kind of stressing on the idea of doing those more uncomfortable kind of workouts, and kind of further research would be interesting to see if they would do more weightlifting and stuff like that, which, you know, me not being an athlete, I thought it was kind of interesting because you hear all the time, like, you know, why would a swimmer want to go in the weight room and lift weights and stuff? But I guess that kind of puts things in perspective for me, because I'm not really generally an athlete like a lot of people are at Loris, so I thought that was just kind of an interesting idea. So here's Jelani's. Let me see if it plays, but otherwise I can kind of, should I just kind of wing it?
We can try. I mean, she's not answering.
Otherwise, you guys can just email me the Google Doc, and it seems like I've been able to play those without any issues. So I can just listen to that one later if you want.
Okay.
When she's still contributing. Yeah.
Okay. So then there's that one. It's just basically touching on the idea of that, you know, the glycogen storages are going to be, they're essentially not depletable, but they will over time, just because of the glycogen isn't generally stored like overall in like the skeletal muscle, but within these different pools. And then there's, yeah, so they found that there's fatigue that can happen between the aerobic. So just for big ideas, just in case, but, and then here's our references.
Awesome. Thank you. Jess?
Do I have to try to share the audio before I go to?
I think it's all happens at the same time.
Okay.
Like when you go to share screen in the bottom left corner, there's like a box you check mark.
Okay. Well, let's try. Well, hers is at the end, so if it doesn't work, I can at least get through most of it. All right, so Alyssa and I, for our exercise physiology lab, we were together. So we wanted to look at just one of the four parts of exercise, like the acute or chronic. We wanted to look at in aerobic resistance, all that. We just wanted to look at one specifically. So we chose to look at acute because I was the only one that had the device we're going to use to measure, and I don't know a lot of active people close to me to measure. So we chose the acute and then resistance. So we were thinking, does a bigger forearm like automatically mean you're going to have more strength in your hand, like grip strength? So we want to see if they were related, and we hypothesized that the larger the forearm someone had, the more grip strength that they would have. So I found 10 subjects that were from ages 13 to 45, 6 females and 4 males. So we had them stand up and then with their arm relaxed, measure the widest portion of their forearm. So we measured that, and then we had the dynamometer. We gave them 3 squeezes with each hand. And then we took an average of those 3 squeezes to figure out like where they were at. And then we took those averages and then the measurements of the forearm, and then we put them all in Excel to do a regression test. And then it should also be noted that for each subject, they used like each arm. So there was like 20 data points to use, but it was only like 10 people. And then for results, I just thought that this graph was pretty cool. I thought like, why would anyone use that before? But I think it's kind of cool to see like the inside one here is your circumference, and then the outside one is like the grip strength people had, and then these numbers on the outside just like saying like different data points. The ones on the outside aren't really significant, but you can see like when the circumference of the arm went down, then so did the grip strength, and then when it went up, so did the grip strength. And there is one data point or like one like subject you guys might be looking at here, like thinking like what's going on there. That was a bigger individual who's not very fit. So like more fat is in the arm than muscle. So that would account for the lower grip strength than circumference. And you can see the averages here for the forearm, 26.8 centimeters, and then grip strength average was 37.2. And then the p-value was super small, essentially 0, 5.3919 to the -8. So it's really small. So we could go up to the 99%. We were confident that this is happening. And then I have a second graph that's going to explain this graph here in more detail if this doesn't make sense to you, like if the circle doesn't make sense. So this lower line here is arm circumference, and then the higher line is here's grip strength. You can see like each subject has their own little dot, and then I always did like right and then left, and you can tell which subjects were left-handed because most of the time the left arm on each person was circumference was smaller than the right, and most time that their grip strength also went down in the arm that was smaller. There's one here that looks, this subject has a big difference in right and left grip strength, even though left was smaller. And this particular subject works in surgery, so like she's with her left arm, what she does is to help suture and stuff is always holding something like a lining in the air. So that contributed to this the extreme difference here. And then here again, we can see that one subject who is bigger and not very fit. And then here's a list as hopefully I can play her audio.
The focus of this lab was to determine if the relationship between forearm circumference and hand grip strength had a correlation. With our findings within this experiment, it showed that there was a significance between forearm circumference and hand grip strength. Previous studies that were done to test forearm circumference and hand grip strength also found a positive correlation. Muscle fibers that are larger have the ability to generate more force than smaller muscle fibers. The reason why this is because of the cross-sectional area. When there is a larger cross-sectional area, there is more surface tension for the fibers to generate more force. So when muscles are larger, there is more cross-sectional area for the muscle fibers, which all in all creates more force. As talked about in the article, forearm circumference and hand length predict maximal hand grip strength among Malaysian population. Some of the reasons for this correlation could be for biological reasons. Skeletal muscle histology and histochemical could play a role in this relationship. Along with our findings, they too found that arm circumference and hand grip strength had a positive correlation. This experiment consisted of 624 healthy male and female subjects that are in the range of 20 to 69 years old. Even with the age difference, this experiment still showed a positive correlation with forearm circumference and grip strength. In the article, Hand Grip Strength Determination for Healthy Males in Saudi Arabia, a study of the relationship with age, body mass index, hand length, and forearm circumference using a handheld dynamometer, also saw a positive correlation with forearm circumference and grip strength. Different from the article just previously talked about, this study consisted of 116 healthy male subjects between the ages 20 to 74 years old. This study stated that their results showed that body dimensions could influence hand grip strength. With the body dimensions having an impact, it is stated that body dimensions could also have an impact on rehabilitation. Within the study, age, BMI, hand length, forearm circumference, and hand grip strength were tested. However, age was the only one that did not have a positive correlation with forearm circumference and BMI. Forearm circumference was stated to have the most significant to hand grip strength, however. Hand grip strength and forearm circumference was also found to have a significance in the article Correlation of Forearm Circumference and Hand Length with Grip Strength in Healthy Young Adults. This experiment was done with males and females of ages 18 to 24 years. This article talked about why testing grip strength was important. The reason why is because it helps indicate diseases, evaluate treatment, progression of muscle strength, and for rehabilitation processes. These main tests are mainly done in physiotherapy as well. With this data collection, there was no known errors to us. It is possible that the device being used could have an error, or one of our subjects could have done a workout previously to the testing, which could have limited their results. However, there was no known errors to us. If there were to do this test again or experiment again or differently, it would be interesting to see if the different body positions would affect the hand grip strength. If being in a seated, laying down, standing, or even a bent position would impact the amount of grip strength.
All right, and then here are our references.
Awesome. Okay. I think that's it. Do you guys have any questions about anything? Let's see, you've got a quiz today. I'll open that up right after class, so if anybody wants to take it early, they can. But otherwise, you've got your exam on Friday. Anybody need me to open that earlier? I think I don't know what time it was open. Everybody's okay with? Text me or email me if you do want it opened earlier. Otherwise, any questions on any material or anything that you guys have left? Everybody's good? Okay. All right. I will email you your feedback from these presentations here shortly after class. And I will also email you pictures of the babies when they come. I will plan to both this last quiz and then your exam will grade themselves. I don't think there's any like short answers. So even if the babies come like today, I'll get your grades submitted, you know, on time and everything. So you'll have those by Monday, I would say at the latest. So, all right. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Have a great rest of your summer and let me know if you need anything.
Thank you. You too.
See ya.